Cool. Hey guys, it's Devin here with Make Anything, and today we're going to do another 3D printer review of this Flux Delta Plus right here. I'm going to be doing a handful of reviews coming up just to give you guys an idea of everything that's out there. But there's nothing quite like this Flux Delta Plus that I've tried yet. And I'm hesitant to even call it a 3D printer because it does so much more than that. It's got a built-in 3D scanner, and the tool heads swap out so that you can do laser engraving, drawing, and vinyl cutting. When I heard this machine could do all those things, first of all I was like, yeah, that's awesome, send me that thing. But second of all, I was kind of skeptical. I mean, it's hard enough to build a good 3D printer, so to put all those things in one machine and to have it at a reasonable price, it's not an easy task. So today we're going to check it out. We're going to look at my experience from unboxing up until right now and see what this Flux Delta Plus is all about. Hopefully it's helpful for you guys. Let's check it out. Alright, here I am back in March, an excited young lad, pre-beard era, opening up my new Flux Delta printer. I got wood pieces for engraving, some stickers, some brochures, my laser engraver. I'll show you what this looks like even though I'm not going to be using it in this video. But basically this is how the tool heads look, and you can swap them out using those magnetic connection points. Each one also has its own manual, and they're all written out really well, and the design and packaging is all thought out. Even the spools are custom made, and you can see they even have these cool little indicators that tell you approximately how much filament you have left. Inside the box we've got another box, and this is the one that's holding the actual Flux Delta printer. The first thing you'll find is this magnetic build plate, which is super awesome. It's flexible, and that sticks on top of this sturdy steel plate, which is also removable. The top here pops up, and that's where you're going to put your spools of flux filament. But since these are custom spools, you're not going to be able to fit any third-party filament in that top compartment. Although you can still feed third-party filaments in there, it just won't look as pretty. There's another cardboard package nestled inside of the printer. In here you'll find these rods that have steel ball ends that connect magnetically to the tool head and to the body of the printer. We've got this little calibration tool for the laser scanner, some needles that are used to unclog the hot end if some plastic gets stuck in there, and there's this bottle of lubricant that you'll use to keep the rods and balls all moving smoothly. This is the actual printing hot end. It's got the nozzle, fans, everything built in, and then under there we've got all the cables we need, power, USB, and that's about it. That's everything in the box, and that's what you're going to need to get this thing started. You can see the manual is very clean and well organized. It's a breath of fresh air after reading a lot of Chinese manuals that are impossible to understand. Here's the base of a printer. It's got this turntable built in for laser scanning, and the 3D printing platform just sits right on top of there. Here are the pulleys that control the arms, and I'm going to put that lubricant on there and run these things up and down until they're moving smoothly. And I'll also put lubricant on these little sponges that are surrounded by the magnets that hold the ball joints in place. I've never seen a printer that uses magnetic connections like this, and it makes it super easy to install the arms, but there is some risk of the arms just popping off if a print gets snagged or something gets in the way. I guess that could be a good or a bad thing. You know, it's not so bad if it just pops off if your cat jumps in the way or something. I'm gonna go ahead and plug in this USB-C cable, which you gotta kind of bend around so it's not so stiff. And then there's also this Bowden tube that you'll screw in, which feeds the filament from the top down into the tool head. Now you can just put down that magnetic build plate, snaps down super easily, pop this thing open, and in there we've got some filament that I'm gonna feed into the machine. You just push down a tab there and feed the filament in. And then once you've got the software installed, it's gonna run this movement test, which as you can see, didn't quite work out as it should have. And that's what I was talking about those metal arms coming off. But that's just because the cable in the top was in the way. Once I adjusted those cables on the top a bit, I was able to pass the movement test and then start my first print. I just loaded a Benchy model into the Flux Studio software and then hit start. From then on, everything is automated. It starts with an auto leveling procedure where the tool head goes down and presses down on the 3 corners of the printer. Then it'll heat up and start printing. Every print will start by extruding this 3/4 circle around the build area, just to make sure the filament is coming out smoothly, and then the print begins. The first layer came out great, everything stuck down, and that's actually a big relief because a lot of the time when you first get a printer, getting that first layer to stick and look good is a big part of the hassle. A built-in camera lets you monitor your print through the Flux Studio software, which is pretty cool, and pretty much everything is done wirelessly over your Wi-Fi connection. The print actually stuck to the surface really well, so I'm glad that they have this magnetic build plate. It's super handy, super easy to use, and as you can see, the Benchy came out looking really nice. The layers aren't totally perfect, and that might be fixed by running it a little slower, but for doing no adjustments of the slicer settings and just telling it to run, it worked really well. Since that worked, I decided to print one of my tall VR sculptures to really test out the 8.2-inch build height. Like the Benchy, this model was printed with the built-in normal quality print setting with no adjustments, and that prints at 0.15mm layer height. There's actually a higher quality built-in setting that'll print at 0.075mm, but honestly, that's pretty overkill for most things. There was just a bit of stringing, but overall you can see the print came out really nice, and this isn't the easiest thing to print. That proved it can print big, so I decided to try some small objects as well, like this cooling nozzle for another printer of mine, and of course I also had to print out a galactop, which the Flux handled no problem. I printed some fidget twister rings to see if it could handle printing multiple objects, and those came out great, as did this tiny twist container. Here's my dirty setup for running a third-party filament through the Flux Delta Plus. As you can see, it's not quite as pretty, but it works. Here's a peek at the Flux Studio software just so you can see that camera quality. Although it is important to note that there is no built-in light, so if you're doing this at night, you're not going to see anything through the camera. And just check out this soft twist container. It came out nearly flawlessly. It's really beautiful. That seam line could be improved a bit, but overall, this is an amazing print. And the only changes I made here to the default settings in Flux Studio was to change the slicer from Cura to Cura 2 and to reduce the print temperature from 210 to 180. Just look at that. I was pretty amazed. In order to test out support material, I printed this giant ambiguous cylinder, and the support material came off super easily. I was able to pull it all off just by hand. And this is another print that came out really, really well. So the prints look great, but how about that 3D scanner? You'll take off that steel plate and then just pop up these lasers, open up the camera, and then stick that calibration tool in there, and just click the calibration setting through the software. Now I had to try running this calibration a few times for it even to recognize that the calibration tool was there. And that brings me to the biggest problem with this printer, which is the software itself. There's still a lot of work to be done. Things are finicky. Sometimes you just have to restart the whole program. Sometimes things don't come up right away. But luckily that's something that Flux can fix moving forward without having to modify anything about the printer itself. So here I am setting up a scan for this little twist container, and you can see it's very simple and straightforward. Just put in some basic settings and then it'll start chugging away, blasting its lasers at the part while it slowly rotates that turntable. This is what you'll see in the software as it scans. Slice by slice, it's gonna sweep around, building that model. Also note that time estimate in the bottom is obviously going way slower than it should. So a 30-minute high quality scan was actually taking me closer to 2 hours. So we'll speed through that scan, and here is the final result. I think these two sweeps were supposed to line up rather than creating an inner and outer wall to my part, but nevertheless it actually did work and I was able to convert it into an STL. It's not the most perfect recreation, but I was able to take this into Mesh Mixer, turn it solid, and make it a printable part, which I then of course printed on the same printer. A little lumpier and not quite to scale, but at the very least it's recognizable. The thing is, with this setup you can only scan really small objects, and the quality isn't really good enough to capture those small objects accurately. So this is definitely more of an experimental feature, which Flux actually states on their website. When I tried to print some more complicated objects, I had no success. Flux would just crash, or the point cloud would come out looking really ugly, like this little horse, which really isn't the most complicated object. It's fun to play around with and to introduce yourself to 3D scanning, but you're probably not going to get much use out of this. I mean, look at this. I guess you could call it modern art, but come on. Alright guys, hopefully this video has given you a good idea of what this Flux Delta Plus is capable of as far as 3D printing and 3D scanning. Those are the features that are available in their basic package, which is currently on pre-sale for $6.99. The additional toolheads like laser engraving, drawing, and vinyl cutting, those are part of the deluxe package. And I'm definitely going to be trying all those things out in future videos because I'm super excited for that as well. And so far I'm impressed with what this printer can do. I'm not going to hail this as the end-all be-all printer. It's not without some flaws, but it does really well for the price, and it's definitely the closest thing I've experienced to a plug-and-play, easy, intuitive 3D printing experience. If you're not interested in dealing with too much behind-the-scenes stuff, modifying the printer, or dealing with the slicer settings, then this is a really good printer. This is great if you just want to have a printer, you want to make some cool stuff, that's your deal. If you want to see me work with those other features, you're going to have to subscribe, maybe even hit that little notification button. I always forget to mention that. But there you go, that's it for now. I'm Devin, this is Make Anything. Until next time, don't forget to stay inspired.